I did flip that back again, didn't I? I've been streaming for more than 2 minutes. Dota, thank you very much for the sub. 8 months. Thank you, dude. Appreciate it. How you doing today? Hey. 5 kids? Ooh. Ooh. Today's one of those days where I'm thinking 1 was a mistake. No, never really. But still, 5. That would be a lot. I'm not sure I could handle 5 kids. Oh dear. COVID. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot of drama. Cody Crossman, hello. I've a hard enough time handling 2. Yeah, I cannot imagine 5 kids. Absolutely not. Okay. So, morning. The goal of today's stream, I'm a bit discombobulated because yesterday I got reminded during stream on Monday that our other dog, she was going for her operation, and she would be I had to drop her off yesterday morning when I would have been streaming. So I didn't do a water stream yesterday because I had to go drop her off for that, and yeah, so I need to do this PR just so it's done and it's into the actual code base. So again, this was getting all the token stuff cleaned up and whatnot. So we'll get that done. Delete the branch. Always delete the branches unless you are absolutely in need of them. And that should clean that up. So now that's all done. And that should be... Yeah, that's done. Okay. So that's the water piece handled for the beginning of the stream. So, I have been trying since last time I streamed to get validation in my request pipeline. So the way this is meant to work is when I send the command create project, right? So I don't know if you remember, I introduced the endpoint for create a project that exists in the tenant management right now because projects are kind of a global concept. They're not a planning item or a story or a ticket thing. They are the project is a global thing, and tenant management is kind of the place right now. It can be broken out later, but for right now, it's in here. And when I send a create project command, I don't want to have to do all the validation, etc. inside of here. I just want this to be nice and clean. Its job is to add a new project. But to do that, I need to obviously validate because of duplication, etc. So A project is kind of like the piece of software overall you've been working on, right? So it might be the um, like liquid sky is the project, or water drink water is the project. Um, so yeah, yeah. So, but the problem is that a project exists. In this case, a project is kind of a grouping. Um, it could align one to one with the product, yes, yeah. But depending on how you organize things, right? But the idea is that work will be associated underneath that project. Um, Jira does another. Jira does have the concept of projects as well. They also kind of have components to break it down even further. So they might in Jira you might do a project would be the main software, but the problem is that the boards and stuff align to the project. So teams and projects kind of go hand in hand, right? Um, so that's one of the things I'm still considering the organization of there, like how much, because one of the things I'm tempted to do is not over organize, and people are people, and people get to work on projects, and then they don't really have teams represented within the code base. So one project per team. I mean, that would normally be the alignment, but you know, um, like our organization has a product, and that product has different groups, and those groups are projects, right? So, like the mobile client might be a project, the billing might be a project, or a group, right? So, um, there's different uh, there's different ways of organizing it. So, project is kind of a um, it's a bit of a weak identifier at this point, but it is a grouping, yeah. Um, and I wondered at what point an epic feature because a project is a higher grouping. Yeah, project is a higher grouping. Epic feature. So at the planning phase, epics aren't a thing. A planning item or many planning items could yield a group of stories that become part of an epic, right? So epic is back to story grouping rather than planning item or whatever. So they're kind of more, again, and that's why I think the benefit of breaking this up into planning versus stories helps there, because those epics don't need to be understood at the planning aspect. They just need to be understood at the grouping of the stories. Oh yeah, please. That'd be good. Always down to learn a little bit more or get a different set of opinions. So for right now, and again, it's a label, it's a thing. Right now, a project is just a name with an identifier. So the project itself right now gives the ability to kind of set a prefix, and that prefix will be used for generating stories or generating planning items off of. Tickets won't generate IDs. They don't need to get necessarily useful IDs or whatever. Um, maybe, but what am I thinking there? Yeah. So, tickets are kind of grouped under a plan, kind of associated with a project. Um, but tickets in general don't necessarily need to be um, project uh, um, uh, identified as a project. They can kind of be, because a ticket could span multiple projects. So, but from a planning item perspective, when you create a planning item, you're going to get a unique identifier that's more human readable, and that's uh that's one, and I just forgot I do not have Prima mode on. Nice. Thanks for the link. I'll check that out afterwards. So, um, as with everything in this project, right? With this thing, um, I'm willing to explore and dive and kind of learn as I go. And I'm not afraid of changing that term or changing that concept later on. We do need some sort of grouping. We do need something to associate things with, right? So from a grouping perspective, just wondering from a domain perspective what it is. So again, I think I'm kind of from identifying actual domain concepts. I'm still kind of flexible on that whole thing because I think that's the thing, right? I understand the software development process. I understand the pieces I'm trying to represent. But what I don't want to do is put a great deal of time into trying to identify the domain specifically and kind of figure it out as I go, because then later on, some of those concepts might actually appear more firmly and I can define them then. Projects is kind of, so project is a, yeah. So if I go to, right. So the problem here is ticketing, planning, stories, right? A project, if I'm working on a project, right, then there are, and again, project kind of seems temporal, but it's not, right? So normally we because we assign the word project to all sorts of different things, right? So, oh, I'm going to give you a new project to work on, right? That project might be go and organize this thing, right? So it's got a finite amount of time. But when we're talking about software development, right, these are projects, but they're an organizational concept, right? But it's still a project, right? It's a group of work that's got a thing. But then this liquid sky, the entire thing, might be referred to as a project, right? Depending on who's talking about it. So this is one of those ubiquitous language struggles. Because the word project has many meanings, and it doesn't necessarily mean the left side is kind of engineering focused. In this diagram, this is crazy workflow sort of random thought. To me, take it to me as a unit of work. Huh? I make group into planning for a particular story. So this is a support concept, right? So when I say ticketing here, right, these are separate components of the system, right? So ticketing here, no, misunderstanding. Separate that would come under the stories. When we're talking about actual work to work on, again, the word ticket, again, different organizations, different groups misuse that term or use that term in different meanings, so you get a different understanding. I don't use the word. So some people will use Jira and they will say, oh, create a ticket for that, right? But Jira doesn't have what they call tickets. They have stories, or they label them as stories. They label them as tasks. They label them as all sorts. So what you call a ticket is kind of a task in Jira, potentially. But again, it's how do we organize these things? So whatever I end up with, right, I've got to decide how flexible I want this to be. So ticketing in this perspective is support oriented, right? These are overall components of the system, right? And the only reason this is to the right of tenant management right now is because obviously I haven't done any of this piece, right? But the goal of ticketing is collecting support issues, right? So a project from a ticketing perspective, who is support? uh, not development. Yeah, bug fixes. Yeah, so incoming customer problems. So I don't want to. I feel that is a first class citizen. I don't want to defer that. Like, I'm going to defer this component until much later, right? This is not going to be a primary focus. Then this will be my focus, right? Because that is the actual workflow to get to developers. But this is something that I should not and cannot ignore because it is very much a first class citizen of the entire support life, of the entire software lifecycle. Because if you don't know how to manage changes to the system, right, or how they come to the system, then you lose that visibility. So it is an integral component of the system overall, but it's not a primary focus right now. This and this will be my biggest focus. So ticketing has a project in terms of so tickets support might be aligned more with teams, right? There might be one team. You might only have one ticketing board from a workflow perspective, but each item could be associated with different projects. So unique identifiers on tickets don't necessarily have as much value as unique identifiers on planning or stories might do. So from a ticketing perspective, and also a ticket could actually span multiple projects, right? Because it might be depending on how you organize your projects. So projects to a ticketing are kind of a grouping. Um, uh, Give me an example of a ticket. Planning, tenant management is user permissions, right? So a ticket might be a customer says that this button doesn't show on the screen. A ticket might be when I hit this button, it deletes this thing, right? So it could be all manner of things, right? It could be a customer comes through the support perspective, which is why I worked on the promotion aspect. It works. They add a ticket, and the ticket is actually something that needs to be worked upon on the other pieces, and therefore can be promoted, right? So a ticket can become a planning item can become a story, or one to many stories. But a project so a tickets are support perspective, planning is product management perspective, stories are where product management and development combine, right? So right now I'm labeling it as stories just because it's the quickest way of breaking that out. Tenant management is kind of overall permissions, which is why right now projects are created in tenant management, because again, I feel that projects are something that has a kind of root and spans many different pieces, and it has, again, each part of the system can have its own understanding of what a project is, because from a domain perspective, project is a grouping project is a grouping thing. From the stories perspective, project is a grouping thing. From a ticketing perspective, it's just a labeling thing, right? But projects also come with a prefix so that you can use a unique identifier, and that's the piece I'm focused on right now. So there's one of the difficulties I am having, and I'm not scared to admit this piece, is teams, projects, products, right? Where do you draw lines and where do you group? It's actually kind of a difficult thing. So you and I might work on the same team, right? We work on a team and the company designates how we work, right? But we might want to organize the software in such this is another challenge of so in the chemical plant, the difference between a project versus product there was pretty clear. Okay. Clients would come to us with some lab scale process and want to scale it to a bunch of supply. We attempt that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it wouldn't. Might turn into a product. It usually didn't. Okay. So we have multiple rooms scheduling these projects. And then a few commercial products that kept everything running. Okay. So what I've learned from, my time is companies struggle to kind of organize efficiently, like the best way to track work, right? So to me, a piece of work is a piece of work, right? Everything else is kind of a label. But if you're working on one of the driving factors of what I'm doing here was if I have a piece of work, say it is add a new screen and there's a dependency upon a service running to that new screen or something, right? That is needing to be deployed in the cloud or whatever, right? So you have a DevOps concern. Well, this piece of work is still this piece of work. Hi, Shai. Doing okay. How are you? This piece of work is still this piece of work. Now, from one team's perspective, a team has resources, people, right? And a team has work to do. So the planning boards kind of align to teams. But, and this again, I'm still I'm going through this many times. I've got all sorts of crazy doodles all over the place of this organization stuff, right? So from the management perspective, they want to see that this piece of work is progressing, but this has a dependency upon another team, right? Now, we could talk about tasking out, we could talk about planning, like breaking out pieces, but ultimately, what they want to know is that piece of work is actually dependent upon this team, not this team, right? So organizationally, right, organizing the scrum boards, organizing all those things is going to be a difficult challenge, right? So in one organization I worked at, we had basically a grouping per team, right? And each team worked on a completely different product. So essentially, the boards were aligned to the product. Acquisitions should be modeled somehow. Those are so common in large companies. Well, that could be its own challenge. But what I've found is, like I'm trying to figure out how to say it properly. But what I'm saying is that no two companies I've worked at are alike on how they organize things. Right? Again, one company had basically a scrum board per um, I'm doing good. Someone unexpectedly called at the door, but since we didn't know who it was, didn't know I wasn't up in time. If it is who I think it is, I'll have to get up a little early next Wednesday. Oh, you've got to be up. Sorry. So, ads are going to show in a few minutes, by the way. So a team and a project and a board were kind of one in one because I think you can in Jira, you can have keeping the house clean. Yeah, nice. Um, so you can have many boards per project, I believe. And I probably need to tinker with it a little bit more because I think I can get a free version of Jira. But one of the challenges I've found is that aligning those things is really difficult, and each company, each group, kind of defines them differently to try and track, because companies think about either the product, because there's one development team, or if there's many development teams, they normally align to that team so they can track independent progress. So the project idea is that a piece of work has a project attached to it, right? It's sourced against a project, but that piece of work can then go into any group. It's not, the team is not aligned with the project. Stepmom arranged for them, but of course didn't let us know when they would come. It's kind of not helpful. So yeah, the product, like for one group, it could be the product is broken up into multiple teams. Multiple teams have multiple responsibilities. So, Patrick, good morning. How are you doing? Sorry, Shy. I've put ads back on a minute and a half every 30 minutes, so I'll lessen the quantity. Hey, how are you, Jeffy? How are you? I am good. I'm still fighting this nasal thing, so I apologize if my voice sounds a bit weird, but I'm good. So, for right now, I'm going to proceed with projects as a thing. I am going to build them into tenant management because it is kind of a core. I'm doing okay. Got to onboard a new dev today, which is good, but not what I really wanted to be doing today. Yeah, new dev. That's good. Or can be. Yeah, I spent my first week at this place doing training and forms. Okay, so long story short, organization is going to be a challenge. I'm going to keep making this flexible, and we're going to keep testing it and tweaking it and pushing it. And like the big challenge is that I'm developing it in a little bit of a vacuum, right? In terms of my usage of it. But hopefully when I get to a certain point, I can expose this for other people to tinker with, and you can kind of add a project or add a team or add whatever and kind of play with that and see how it works. But again, as with everything, I think a little bit of exploration works. I don't think there's going to be too much. There's going to be a lot of learning and a lot of pieces in here, but it's not irreparable if I have to pull things back. So for right now, a project exists at a tenant management level. It will publish and do all those lovely things with Kafka so that other pieces of the system can understand projects. I have 4 hours to finish setting up his computer and crash course him in our code base before my meeting today. No pressure then. Kind of feel like going back to bed. Doesn't seem like we're back today. Hey, if you have that luxury. Sorry. Okay. Now it's only been months and months of pairing. That would be good. I'm not a big fan of sleeping. I have to be doing stuff, so I feel at a loss if I can't be doing something. I've been working mostly remote since he lives an hour and a half away. It's funny. I've been starting to miss the team aspect recently. Like I kind of work on my own, so I'm sat on my own for most of the day, and um, I kind of miss the interaction and the collaboration aspect of the teams. So I love sleeping since I never have much energy. Yeah, it feels like a catch-22 for me. Like if I sleep, I don't have energy because I'm kind of comfortable, but then I've got, yeah. So I always end up getting up and doing stuff. I'm gonna just do. Why does it allow that language in my channel? um, I only spent today working on this polymorphism issue that's reared its head recently, but it is what it is. um, yep, no worries, Shy. Well, I hope you get a little bit more rest. And, nice. Um, huh. That's tough when you've got to balance onboarding people. You've got to do that management aspect of things, um, but you've also got problems to solve. It's a balance I have failed at regularly, um, but because I take the attitude of um, have you seen my? Yes, I will reply. Um, I actually had a reply pending. I just didn't want to just send it just before the stream. So yeah, I'll uh, I'll reach out in a little bit. So um, like I want to be a developer, but I love developing, right? I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love developing, right? And I want to learn and I want to grow. And I think the only way you really do that is by working with others because you can get to test your opinions, you can get to test your ideas, you can see new views of the software, you can see new ideas coming through, and that collaborative environment is one I've chased for a very long time. Um, but in the same, I feel I am a strong enough developer that I can have an opinion, and I'm a strong enough character that I can articulate the problems of software. And I feel that a lot of developers, um, are comfortable getting the job done, but they don't know necessarily how to protect themselves from the management garbage, right? The the stuff, wasting your time then. So and that's kind of why I'm building this product, right? Is I want to build a product that helps get out of the way of the developer, but gives all the management all the information and tools they need to track what's going on, right? Because that's what they care about, right? Where is our money being spent to bring money in, right? And it's the need, it's the business, it's not unimportant. But a developer doesn't oftentimes get to see that, or it's not articulated well to them. So I kind of feel that I want to go into a role of kind of leading the charge on software, but also being able to give the developers what they need. Yeah. The language, I kind of keep the language in this stream um, to a bare minimum because to um, yeah, it's just try and just keep it under control. So I'm not a prude. It's not I don't agree, but it's I just try and keep it so that anyone can come in. A few times I've actually partnered as a total waste of my time, but I agree that having other people around can be beneficial. It's mostly a waste of my time because I largely had to actually problem solve myself. Yeah, so pairing collaboratively, um, and again, the business is a lot of the responsibility there because oftentimes, and I don't know if this is the case, obviously I'm just assuming, but oftentimes you've got a problem to solve. You need to get on with that problem, right? Taking the time and sparing the time for a junior developer or whatever to get through the problem can seem frustrating, especially if you know what you have to do. Um, so standing back and walking it through with the other person, like and having the stepping away from the keyboard and making the other person do it, and then making yourself explain to them is the test of that piece. I think that's what Dota's getting at. Yeah, you shouldn't be driving if you know how to do it. You should be guiding because that person will then push back more because they'll not understand everything that you've got in your head. If you're driving and you understand the problem and you understand the solution, off you go. And that's the challenge. That's what the same with probably unit testing. You need to, with unit testing, you need to stop yourself from going too far ahead, even when you know the solution. I quoted that, sorry. Because you should test your own knowledge as you go. So the pairing can aid in that you can test what you really understand and what you really know as you go by just talking it through. So that's where I find pairing the most useful. So they knew the code base of the task, but then somehow partner work quickly became, Patrick is just going to do this while you stare at me. Well, that sounds like an unproductive 15-minute turns, solidified navigator driver or strong style pairing. Rules around when you stop and discuss next steps. Yeah, you're way more formal than I am, but structure wise, yeah. And I find that a lot of the problem is that developers aren't keen to do goofy things, right? And doing things like sitting there and talking about it when you know there's a solution feels goofy sometimes. But I think the business again is responsible for making sure that they know they reinforce that ability to do it, because sometimes it's like, oh, we've got a job to get done. We don't have 4 hours to do this. We need to get this done now. And I'm not saying you need to pair on critical bugs. That's not what I'm saying. But you do need some sort of structure, some sort of understanding, and reinforcement from people who are more involved with the process. So if you are the champion of the pairing, you said, hey, we need to pair on this, then it's up to you to make sure you're a little bit more showy, I suppose, of, oh, now you should take the keyboard and I'll drive, and now, hey, you drive, you navigate, I'll drive. But it should be back and forth. Senior navigates and junior drives, yeah. But also, junior navigating at times is useful. I've found it very useful to sit there and not do anything without the direction, even if I know what I'm going to do. Because again, it's testing that person's knowledge and making sure they're it's not just about the getting the job done. It's about that communication with the team members, right? It's can I guide you? Can I use the right terms? Can I explain myself clearly? Because then when it comes time to have discussions about how software should be written and discussions with the group, you've kind of broken down some of those barriers and you've kind of figured out how to communicate with each other. So it's not just about writing a line of code as well. When to switch over is helpful, so I haven't really figured that out. Yeah, I mean, generally, if you're sat at the keyboard and you feel really confident in what you've got to do, switch out. Unless that person is more confident. Like if you start feeling, oh, I know how to do this, then stop yourself and step back and have that other person guide you through it. And if you find yourself sat there going, and they're sat on the phone, switch. Man. The congestion in my head is kind of like when you get a really terrible headphone and it blows, and you get that crackling noise on a cheap headphone. That's what my hearing sounds like right now. And when I'm talking, it comes through. I haven't partner programmed in years though. Most of bad experience with it. Right, because again, I think it's something you have to embrace. You have to kind of get into the goofiness a little bit of it and be a little bit like, oh, I'm going to step back now and make that effort. But it's not just about the coding. It's about the teamwork. It's about the building of a shared understanding. And it's actually my preferred way of interviewing is to set a challenge for someone and then sit and discuss that code, because it's a big measure of someone. Can you sit down and actually talk about software with that person and talk about concepts? How much do you struggle? How are they clear about what they're relaying, right? Can you get through that? So create a common understanding, a common piece, and then talk around that piece and see what happens. I have a decent time ever ran it, but I generally don't generally have the time to sit there. All the tasks I have are too much too complex. And again, that's the problem. The employer has to embrace it and give you the ability to do it. Yeah. Creating a silo, if you feel yourself creating pieces of work that no one else understands, then that's a problem. Hi, Skigama. How you doing? Which cloud do you prefer? I don't really have any preferences. I can call him. I can't get to work. Good luck all. Delta, thank you very much. Thank you for the conversation as always. Take care. This is solo dev at the company, but all my work is in silo. Yeah, that's something you want to get rid of. Trust me, you do not want to be siloed. Cloud-wise, I'm not a big cloud user right now. I've got a variety of experience with both Azure and AWS. I haven't tried Google. So if I had to say anything right now, Azure, because obviously the integration with .NET tooling is a little bit cleaner. There's a lot more stuff there for me, like the out of the box stuff is easier. So if I'm doing .NET, then yeah, absolutely, I would probably stay with Azure. Pricing wise, I don't think there's much of a big difference. But I'm not a big cloud user right this second. Okay, so um, validation. So the way this is working right now is there's this is a mediator uh, command, right? I love GitHub Copilot. Copilot is extremely useful. I use it every day. So what happens is where are you? Where are you? Here. So I have these extensions I've kind of configured to enable using fluent validation with my commands. So what happens is when I send this command, the idea would be that it gets validated before it actually hits the actual core of the code. So when I send the command, ultimately it'll end up here, but it needs to be validated first. So I have a validator for it, and that validator is going to say, okay, well, the command you passed in, it has to have a name, and there's a maximum length on it, and also the prefix cannot exist already for this tenant, right? So a command has the tenant identifier, it has the name and the prefix. So this should get run, right? And it does run. We can get it to run. However, so again, when I configure the validator for this command is going to be the create project validator, and here I'm trying to set up a pipeline, and the pipeline is, hey, you can add many phases into a mediator request, so every request will get evaluated to see if it needs to be processed by this pipeline part, right, before it gets to the actual handler itself. And what this is doing right now is I'm testing this one because I'm having some issues with the injection. So I say, okay, well, I need to make sure I have an iValidator of the T message in this pipeline, and I should process it. And what I need to do is run the validation and return a result. Now the current version of this, right, validates and throws. So this one works. But the problem is that this throws, and now I need to handle an exception out in my API layer. So I've got two options. I put a try catch around it all, right, and catch some exception here, a fluent validation exception, etc., and then handle it out, which I'm not too keen on. Or I don't throw an exception, which is a bit cleaner, and I do await validator.validate async. And now this result I return, right, based on it being valid or not. If it's not valid, I return a result right here. If it is valid, I go ahead and do the actual message pipeline part. But the challenge I'm having is sorry, I'm just checking something. My one of my dogs just got up and looking around. The challenge I'm having is if I try and do that, it isn't working so well for me. So what I'm testing right this second is, can I break this pipe? So the pipeline itself is an iPipeline behavior. That other one inherits from another class, the message preprocessor, which is just kind of a wrapper around it, right? But I want to see if I can actually get this, because if I can do it this way, I can return a result here, right? The message preprocessor in that other one, all this does is this piece here, right? It just says, okay, well, handle handle the message, and with the overrode method, and then if it completed, then carry on with the pipeline. Otherwise, it kind of handles out the response part as well. Actually, why is that? If it completed... this is because... Sorry. This is because if it actually is asynchronous, then this won't be... It's completed successfully. This will carry on down here and handle it out like the task and process it as an asynchronous request. This one, if it was synchronous, it will process it synchronously. Sorry. But in my part, I'm not getting the dependency injection for that validator. So I have configured for iValidate to create project command, create project validator. So I have one configured. And I'm breaking this out so I can debug it properly. So let's try and run. I need the full stack because I've got to get the token and stuff. Copy that value. Go over here. So I've kind of created. I did create a version of this that would do that would return a result and do the capture of the exception, etc. Actually, that doesn't work properly, but it wouldn't actually process. So this project, for anyone who hasn't joined in before, is my Agile project management platform, Liquid Sky, as I've termed it right now, and I'm working on creating a new project, and validation is the name of the challenge this morning. And what I'm trying to do, let's see if that changes when I've got the. Okay, so the problem is my validator's null. So that ain't going to work. I do not want to be adding many projects. Worry about that later. So tenant management projects. Obviously, that's bad. So there we go. So why is my validator null? If I do the validation command preprocessor, comma, so that's this version of it, and then run that. Okay, that's running. So when I hit send now, it never calls this. Hold on. So now that worked because it actually completed. Close that down. So yeah, I mean, if anyone has any questions, any thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask. The development of this is not necessarily the focus of the stream. It's just kind of, I do the development on stream to share what it is to develop a larger scale application. There are a lot of moving parts here that I'm more than happy to go into. I'm using service bus. I'm using Kafka with Rabbit. Using service bus with RabbitMQ. I'm using Kafka, SQL Server, and all sorts of other technologies at play to achieve what I've got so far. But I'm always happy to talk about it. See, that didn't validate it at all. It didn't even fire the validator. So what I was going to look at there was, is it an I command? Did I send it as an iMessage or something like that? So if I go to tenant management application and go to projects, I command. Hold on. No, but that is. So where does I command come from? I'm wondering if that's the problem. iMessage. So I was trying to specify that, but the problem is that would have to be I command of e-response, I think. Let's see if that changes things. This is still not perfect as well because it won't deal with it asynchronously, but yeah. Ads are running. I do apologize if you're behind them. Oh, that was healthier. We have a validator. So then what we're going to do here. Oh, come on. Whatever. Restart everything up again. Okay. What the? Okay. I might be able to get away with just debugging this one, so let's see. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we have a validator. We have a task. Bad request. Why did that? So it was the filtering that was wrong on there. So initially, that's okay. We now get in here. Validate async. Let's go to the endpoint. Let's see if we get a result that has the errors in it. Okay, we do get in there. Okay. So we result project prefix already exists. Okay, so it did validate. It's not valid. So we don't actually do the handler. We do get here, and we have a result, and we have errors. Okay, so that's doing exactly what I want it to do, right second. Uh, so best. What I'm looking for now is, okay, what is the best practice that I should follow for returning error messages through the API? So the API should return the error, I believe, in this case. It's an internal API, so it's not like I need to worry about exposing that publicly. Right? You have to be authenticated, and it is for a product that I am building. But I want to follow good practices, best practices, returning. Let's see how many opinions we have here. I mean, essentially, this is a conflict, not a bad request, right? But I don't want to necessarily infer, because the project name could exist. There's other things that I could do here, and I want to set again. I'm trying to set a practice, right, for myself to go forward. Here's how I handle validation. Here's how I handle returning these types of things, so I can start to become consistent. Bad request. Is it a bad request though? And that's another issue, right? I'm validating this and not even getting into the command. One of the benefits of doing it inside of here would be I'd be able to return a kind of response that was a bit more tailored, essentially. But either way, I can't infer the HTTP status code from the error messages, or I shouldn't. So bad request is going to be it. So what would you do is the question. Do I have any opinions out there? How have you handled this in the past? Can I? It does take. It's not like that because it wants. Hold on. It's an experiment. Hold on. Error response is a thing. There's a thing inside of there. Awesome. Let's have a look at fast endpoints then. They might have some ideas. Validation. There we go. Okay. So error response might be useful here. So this is API validation. So this is I'm validating at the application layer, right? Before I get into the handler. So that is there's no way I can do this as part of this piece, right? But this would be okay if I wanted to put the. And it's funny, I found a clip where I've explained this in the past before. Multiple tiers of validation, right? The client should validate certain things, right? You're entering a name, you are entering, there is a prefix, etc. The API should validate, did I receive those things, right? So I could put attributes on this and do fluent validation on the input, right? To make sure that I'm not even calling into the next piece. So it's kind of a multi-tiered thing. What I am doing here is I'm assuming that all validation has happened, right? So I'm trusting that validation has occurred, and I will not get into here without. So I don't need to do those extra checks in this code. Oh, what if the project exists already? What if this exists already, right? Those are things I can validate against. I could also put them in here, but then I'd be making redundancy, and it would be more confusing. Okay, sorry about that. So response. Yeah, here you go. So I don't need that. Errors equals result errors to array. No, hold on, what was that? Huh. A dictionary. So let's find out if that's meant to be an internal. Right. So is that meant to be? Yeah, that's what I thought. Um, okay, so that should do that. Let's see what that comes back with. Make sure that's working properly. So again, just trying to establish a good pattern here, a good style. Yeah, that's not good. Stream error. That's impressive. So it lets me build that, but it doesn't work. Stream error in the I have not seen that message before. So I'm going to assume it's because... Although no, it shouldn't. Status code. Why isn't that enabled? Huh. This is going to become an even bigger problem soon. So it looks like .NET is introducing some sort of messaging pattern stuff, and it means we're going to have like iCommand, iHandler, whatever all over the place in different libraries. And in this case, I'm using Mediator, but I'm going to end up with overlaps. That's all part of that messaging pipeline stuff. So I could remove Mediator and use all fast endpoint stuff, but I don't want to do that. Validation. That looks so messy. No. Error response. That's not going to really help me. That's not what... Hold on, that's not what it looks like. Watch. No, oh, because I'm adapting it. I'm making an Dallas. Yeah. So in here, I'm returning a result. That result is being handled out here, where I'm saying this has to be a result, and then I'm returning a result.error, which is okay. That return, because that takes a list of strings, okay. That's okay. does not like that. This seems redundant to do it that way, though. Right, because now I'm technically wrapping something that's built to do that. And then, yeah, new. I don't know how to do. That seems weird. This is going to be unnecessarily. Start. Uh, that's horrendous. We're not doing that. Why a dictionary there, but valid? That does not make any sense. Okay, let's go back to what I had. Error result. Public enumerable string. Do that. Let's try it that way. Okay. So when we send that, we get messages back. So it looks like other people are more. Fast endpoints is happy to do that. I mean, they are. So generally, what I'll do is I'll use a larger project as an example of, okay, this is a practice that's not necessarily uncommon. I can't just use the status as an indicator of what's wrong, because many things could be wrong with this, right? So that works right now. Error result again might actually come out of there. I don't have an overall message. I mean, the client would just receive a list of messages, right? What's actually wrong, and even then, that could be errors, because the client isn't going to receive error result. It's going to receive an object that is errors. So that would be errors, and then right. But the main part there is I can't create a duplicate. Uh, um, a duplicate project. Okay. So, much delayed. So, as a tenant administrator, I should be able to define a project. Permissions, tenant administrator, create project. So, the only other outstanding part of this is actually that as a tenant administrator part. Sorry. Let's clean that up actually. So this, I don't necessarily want to throw that out, but I think it's for right now, it's safer to throw that out than it is to use it. I may have an error there if I've used it anywhere else. Nope. So right now, this is a very specific type of message. So let me make sure that I'm not just breaking the other one, because there is two. So register user is an I request. So this validation now would be broken. It wouldn't actually apply validation on this. So I'd miss this validator code here, which isn't the end of the world. This is one where we do have different validation in place. But it is still meant to be a command. So that should be an I command. That's I can put it at. Oh, I command handler. Right, so that will now pass validation, and that's okay. Again, I'm going to grow into that, right? I'm going to learn to use more of it. I'm going to expand my usage of it. Okay. Um, clean up that. Clean up that. Yeah. Ultimately, I might need to add in a whole bunch of other pipeline pieces, right? Because obviously this one is a very specific case. It has to be a command with a response, um, where response is a result, and it's like it's flagged as I validate. So there is a potential to add multiple things into this pipeline. That's okay. Um, this cast works okay because this is going to be a result. It's just it doesn't know it inside of here. Uh, validation-based preprocessor with result response instead of throwing a validation response. So yeah, that introduces that. There's obviously a lot of changes here. Why? The configuration, the context to add that, the actual project itself, the change of register user. That needs to be and it's better to be explicit about what it actually is rather than pardon me. Wow. Sorry, I keep getting a lot of messages, which is distracting me. I apologize. Um, okay, so uh, remove validator, improve validation, remove preprocessor. So what I was focused on there was trying to make sure that the result, again, it has to be where there is a result being returned because it matches the interface. So if I get a result, I get a result, and it won't come out. It'll just populate that result for me. Um, if it was returning a different type, then that would be a challenge, right? Because I couldn't just say, oh, now it's going to return a result, or it could return this, right? I don't have that luxury at this point. Validation errors to so that's that. Yeah, roles. We'll get to that in a second. So we have this, 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 and this. Introduce projects, jets, unique prefix per tenant. So what I haven't introduced there is any uniqueness on the name. That's going to be something I'm going to have to deal with later. I just didn't want to tackle that one specific one now. So roles. I did introduce in here, roles is going to be, oh, this is going to be tough because I call it roles. Ugh. So you have to be a tenant administrator. So if I run this now, this should pass. Well, it should fail, but it should fail because it gets to there. Right. Now if I go and... where are you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the role, log back in, get the token, and then try and make the same request, and it should fail. You don't need to see me doing the role change, because, yeah. Okay, so that role's been removed from Jane. Now if I go here again, 403 forbidden. So now I'm not allowed to do that request, which is good. Let's just add that role back in. Log back in again. I'll refresh the token. And again, I'll just prove jwt.io. So this is this version. There's my administrator, and I take this version. No administrator role's gone. So copy that value again. And we get the error. Okay, so that's actually working. So I now have the concept of roles available to me, which is good. So what I might do is have, you have to be in this role, but then I want extra permissions, right? That might be a thing I do. So let's stop that. Introduce role require for project create. Okay. So let's commit push them. Go to here. So that's just piece number one, right? The API aspect is piece number one of this. There's a whole lot more involved. Let me go to create pull request. So this PR is going to be against development, and yeah, 18 files. That looks about right. Let's create the PR. So we added a table for projects. We added a system roles object. That's just so that this string is in one place. That's all that's for. We added a validator, a command preprocessor. When we use it, we do that. We introduced our result into the extensions validation projects. We need result in there. It seems a lot of these libraries are now pulling so many big dependencies through, like Fluent validation is pulled through by fast endpoints, right? It's this big library in its own. Here's our first pass at validation of the project. Again, we can use this method to actually query to see if the project is unique by name as well. So we may need to do that afterwards. Oh, we will do. Then create project itself is relatively simple. It's create the project. We create a specification for querying it so we can find it by tenant and prefix. There we go. We've got it. That's just to match it. That might not be something I want to build as a spec. It might be more of a get the projects for the tenant identifier and then do that. This command handler, we made a change to that to make register user command. And then we need the entity base type because the project is a base entity. It does have ID, etc. on it, and those need configuring specifically because they are read-only fields from the usability standpoint. Ready the project. The project again is defined as an entity base, so that gives it ID, identifier, date added, date created. Date added, last updated. We have the endpoint where we've said that you have to be a tenant administrator to do this, and this is the API. And then we create the project and then return the result with the error messages. And this again will probably move somewhere else as we need. The validators, we have the validators, and the unit tests are just simple around project being created. And we test them. We just run the validator in the unit tests to validate. That's just to verify, pass the information, we get the right thing. So as we change the validator for the future, that will allow that. Okay, so let's merge that into development. Leave the branch. Check out development. Update that. And then we can go here, endpoint projects, yep. And we can just delete that branch. That's all clean. And there we go. So, next step is to let me go back here, click on this. So I can pick up the UI aspect. The list of projects comes next, then UI for the list. So each one of these is kind of two sides of the coin. The reason I'm breaking them down that way is because obviously they are quite distinct sets of work. They're both large enough in their own respect that they could potentially be worked on in parallel. If you were working with a team in this, what you could do, sorry, I read that and then like how you said next step right as I was typing it. Those are the last two words of my notice of planned departure email to HR. Nice. So what you could do is if you're working on this in a team, one group could actually go off and do the UI because you can mock all the data, right? You could, especially using good principles, you could actually create a store that is temporary and provides you the data as if it's been invoked. So you can build everything up until the GraphQL endpoint, and actually just mock out a request there, providing data. So you can build the UI out given data, and then work on that, and then literally just wire the GraphQL query later, and you're good. So that's why I break these stories down into UI and API separately. The API is an independent piece from the UI, and always should be. So I think the next piece is to create the UI. So go here, assign it to me, put that on the board, and there we go. And yeah, I think that'll be tomorrow's stream now. At this point, I think I've got to go and fetch a child from school. Yes, I'm very distracted today. My apologies. I feel like I'm missing something with the project stuff. Like, I feel like there's other pieces that I've kind of made notes of somewhere. So the goal will be to get the projects in here so that basically, when I go to the planning items, this won't work right this second, but I'll be able to filter. That's the part. I need to be able to say, okay, I want this project, I want this project. So planning items will be filtered by project. Then it will be adding the ability to select the planning item in here. Creating the project from the UI perspective is a little bit more involved than just adding in a screen. There's a lot more to do that because I need to wire up a new settings screen. I need to add those pieces in there, the structure, everything like that. And it's why I feel that UI, especially if you're building an API that is quite involved in itself, you should never put the UI and the API stories together. UI can be mocked, UI should be mocked, and it's possible to do. So some people were kind of like, oh, well, I want to do the entire slice, right? I want to do the UI with the API, with the database all in one go. But if you think about the sheer amount of work I've just put into what I'm doing, that's a lot of work. Since I'm typing here, I'll send this after you finish it. Current thought. Going back to another conversation about pair programming, another colon. I certainly see the value in this type of team-based software dev strategy. The unfortunate thing on our team is that we have 3.2 developers who each specialize in specific areas of the product. There isn't much overlap in the elements we work on, other than the junior dev who spends most of his time researching and addressing bugs. Yeah, it is an unfortunate aspect when you don't have a team. You have a collection of developers. You don't specialize. You don't knowledge share. You don't cross over. There's all sorts of challenges with that way. And I get it. Big pieces of work, it's hard to bring people up to speed. It's hard to transfer knowledge when each person's working on a large piece of work. But I'm in the same boat myself now, right? I'm working on pieces that no one else cares about because they've got their own pieces to work on. So it does mean they get lost in the mix a bit. Things get muddled up, and it relies upon my communication skills to relay exactly where things are. So yeah, pair programming in that environment is not useful. Yeah. Oh man, this congestion is driving me nuts. Just want free. So I'm glad I got over that hump because the validation error was upsetting me because I was getting frustrated uh, that I couldn't figure it out. And as it turns out, it was a very simple thing. I was just missing a pattern as such. So I will aim to continue on later on today. If not tomorrow, we'll get the UI built out. We'll start adding a settings screen of some form, adding in the ability to add a project. And then we've got the ability to add the project. Technically, I could move sideways a little bit and get into the assigning a project and filtering. Status. Actually, there's a whole can of worms it opens up again. When I add a project, the UI does not know about the projects, right? So even if I create, so I don't need to create the. That's actually GraphQL. That's not an API essentially. So that drives another need, right? I need to now consume those projects because in my whole distributed system fun, the project exists here right now. The other systems don't have any concept of it. So I now need to publish project as a thing and consume it in my view. I also then need to be able to store it when I store here. So, I could just accept that I've got a GUID and it doesn't matter because the UI will figure that part out, or I could validate it by making sure that I'm inserting for a project that exists and I have that information. Because the way I'm doing this right now, I've been thinking about this, I don't technically need the associated tables just to give you information, right? Even tenant isn't necessary in these tables because I have a tenant identifier. That information will be combined at the view perspective. So that's something I want to go into as and kind of think through more. But anyway, I'm going to call it here. I'm going to have to just stop the stream again. I have to go and fetch my daughter from school. She's in a similar boat to me right now. So I will. I'll be back tomorrow. I will hopefully be joining your stream afterwards online. Yeah, well, I will return tomorrow, hopefully with sounding a little better again. And yeah, it's getting very tiring after 5.5 weeks. So if I feel like this tomorrow, though, there will be no stream. That's for certain. I'm not doing this anymore like this. So, but yeah, I will hopefully be able to join your stream later, and I will see you again soon. Take care, all. Bye. Thank you.